We're picking up on Chapter 12 of Transformation of America, the true life story of CIA mind control slave by Cathy O'Brien with Mark Phillips. Operation Carrier Pigeon. The term pigeon is one which I have been familiar since the early 1980s when I first began delivering messages between my owner, Senator Byrd, and Puerto Rican drug lord and CIA operative Jose Busto. Houston had simply explained to me then, as we fed the flock of pigeons roosting at the old San Juan Cathedral, that pigeons were used as messengers. The DIA's U.S. Army Lieutenant Michael Aquino often activated my pigeon programming during the hands-on mind control demonstrations. Dick Cheney further defined the term pigeon when I learned of Operation Carrier Pigeon in the mid-1980s. He said, "You have been selected from the flock of programmed slaves for the carrier pigeon operation for the purpose of carrying messages from point A to B as ordered. Pigeons, once they fly the coop, find no freedom in flight, but carry out their tasks of delivering their messages from point A to B by the shortest possible route, a direct route. I will direct your route and you will deliver messages as ordered." But no one defined my role as a pigeon more eloquently than President Reagan during the course of Operation Carrier Pigeon. The cryptic pigeon language utilized by all participants in the operation was intermixed with Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, and Genie in the Bottle cryptic programmed themes. While pigeon meant messenger, carrier pigeon referred to the U.S. Air Force aircraft that actually transported the arms and drugs. Pigeon droppings included and sometimes multinational dispersal of the arms and drugs after they reached their destination. Pigeon holding meant cover-up of the criminal activity. These definitions, as I understood them then and understand them now, may well include deeper, more diverse meaning than I have perceived. Habib's favorite programming theme was Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, due to its international recognition and relation to the ultra-effective NASA maritime and infinity space programs for instantly disassociating programmed participants. He habitually spoke in Alice in Wonderland cryptic language, and even used it for sex, as was evident by his Tweedledee and Tweedledum brutal games of perversion. Due to Habib's orchestration of Operation Carrier Pigeon, this CIA covert operation was littered with Wonderland mirror themes from beginning to end. My CIA handler, Alex Houston, had just returned from a brief solo trip to Florida with an elaborately wrapped box. "It's from a friend of yours," he told me as he handed me the box. Let's go into the bedroom so you can unwrap it and see it through the looking glass." Cryptically triggered, I mechanically walked to the bedroom as ordered. I removed the silver metallic bow and wrappings and from the box and found an expensive, elegant dress made of unusual, shimmery, silvery fabric. A sheet of plain white stationery written in Philippe's recognizable shaded blue script lay on top of the dress. It read, "The heat you radiated when we last met melted my mirror. I had it made into a dress for you." Cut to accentuate your figure, so that when you melt into it, you lose yourself into the pool of liquid mirror. Step into the looking glass, sink deep within its pool, and straddle dimensions in time. I'll see you there, along with my friends. It was signed passionately, Phil Habib, with his name written upside down under a line as though it were a mirror reflection. Houston knew there would be a note and ordered, "Let me see your notes." Snatching it from my hands, he gestured toward the dress. "Go ahead and try it on while I read this note. Now let's see, what does it say? Come to Papa?" I took the dress from the box. It did not feel like anything I've ever felt before. It was cold like satin, but thin like silk. I started crying quietly, afraid that Habib would somehow show up if I had it on. "Put it on and I'll zip you in," Houston said, and as he took another note from his wallet and read it as I undressed. "There's a pair of magic shoes to wear with your dress. Something enlightening to transport you faster than the old ruby slippers. Oz, the shoes, like the dress, are made just for you, and when you wear them you'll be fit for a king. I'll send them to you at the appropriate time." Houston tucked the note back in his wallet. "See, you're not going anywhere now. You'll meet him at the White House when you have shoes to wear with it. Just slip it on." I did. Houston accessed Habib's Wonderland brutal sex programming for his own gratification. Afterwards, I hung the dress in Kelly's closet with my other trigger-significant clothes, out of sight, out of mind, until the shoes arrived. Habib sent the shoes for me soon afterward. They were shiny black with what appeared to be silver lightning bolts down the high heels and sides. In place of dinner that night, Houston gave me a Wonderland wafer, MDHMA XTC, CIA designer drug ecstasy. MDMHA XTC, huh. The wafer, like all those supplied by Habib, bore his trademark that read, "Eat me." I began to prepare for the night out as instructed. Houston zipped me into the dress and turned me to face the mirror. As I slipped into the shoes, Houston took another note from Habib out of his pocket and read, "Something enlightening to transport you faster than the old ruby slippers. Click your heels together," I obeyed, "and be there in a snap. Electrifying with electrifying with the rumble of thunder, bolting through time so you won't be late for a very important date." Houston hit me with his stun gun and I passed out. He then drove me to the Nashville airport where I boarded a small plane to Washington, D.C. I found myself at the White House with Bird attending another small cocktail party of about 20 or 30 people. After we spoke with Reagan, Bird pointed me in the direction of Philip Habib and sent me over to him. My eyes were locked on Habib's as he hypnotically said, "Melt into your melted mirror for an electrifying ride. Look deep into the black of my melting mirror eyes. See you reflecting me, reflecting you, reflecting me, you, me, you, me, until we melt together and sink deep into the other side." Habib took me to a quieter spot in an adjoining room with the help of another Wonderland wafer. As he said in Alice in Wonderland cryptic, "Welcome to Wonderland, kitten. This is a very important date. I haven't time to explain." He gave me the wafer and continued, Eat it and I'll take you through the door." Habib took me by the hand and led me to the doorway of another room. It was a dining room of sorts where an informal array of guests was gathered. As soon as Habib appeared in the doorway, King Fahad of Saudi Arabia quickly excused himself from the table and approached. He was wearing a multicolored robe and headwear with a black-brown rope band. I was instantly repulsed by his wicked, lecherous gaze. I stepped back into the other room in fear. Habib introduced me. "This is one of my friends I mentioned in the letter." I robotically responded, "It's a pleasure to meet you," and extended my hand as taught in charm school. Fahad bent over to kiss my hand as he did. His evil black eyes bore into mine as he softly said, "Your beauty warms my embers. See them glowing deep within my darkness. See them glowing deep within the darkness of my eyes, igniting into flame, black flame." He laughed wickedly at the effect of his use of NSA hypnotic conditioning. Habib slapped him on the shoulder, as though they knew each other well, and there were no formalities between them, and asked, "Am I right? Is that fit for a king?" The three of us went into another room that appeared to be a guest bedroom that Habib was occupying. He closed the door and told me, "Diplomatic relations are very important. You know the old saying, when in Rome, do as Romans do. Well, he's a king. Get on your knees. His wish is your command. Satisfy his deepest wishes. It's your turn for a magic carpet ride, so turn your genie free." Fahad was sitting in a chair by a coffee table. As I knelt on the carpet in front of him, his piercing black eyes seemed to stab into my brain like swords. I could not turn away. He stroked my neck with his index finger, activating oral sex programming. "I have heard about you and the intent you on having you. Oh, I have heard about you and am intent to having you." Somehow he found the slit in his robes and parted it as he continued, "Come into my tent, and a feast has been spread for you." He spread his legs and exposed his penis, one of the nastiest I had ever seen, like a black night-crawler worm that smelled and tasted strongly of spice. Habib watched as I carried out my orders, much to the pleasure of Fahad. Then Habib went to the chest of drawers and began pulling out his electric prod and bondage equipment as he explained, "Now let me introduce you to my other friend. I need to bottle up a message with your genie and send it out to sea. You know what to do. Begin undressing now." I did as I was told, and lay on my stomach on the bed while Habib sodomized me. He used his electric prod equipment and programmed me with the message to deliver to the General Manuel Noriega while on an upcoming NCL cruise. I was at sea on board an NCL cruise ship bound for their private island in the Bahamas, Stirrup Cay, which was to be my rendezvous point with Noriega. Bottled up in my mind through the recent Genie in the Bottle programming was a cryptic message from King Fahad to Noriega. It was a moonless night, whereby the Caribbean waters appeared as black as the night. I could not distinguish the sky from the sea in accordance with NSA hypnotic conditioning. I gazed totally entranced from the rear of the ship. Houston used the opportunity to hypnotically enhance Habib's previous programming, while traumatizing me with the threat of being thrown overboard. The thought of treading water in the inky blackness while the lights of the ship fade further and further away until all is black and I sink into the depths of the sea did not seem as horrible in light of the fact that I was to be the bearer of bad news to Noriega in the morning. Upon arrival to the NCL Stirrup Cay, Houston and I began our usual walking trek to the furthest end of the island where the CIA operations radio station and equipment were located. In a hidden cove on the island's backside was a smaller island of sufficient size to conceal Noriega's personal yacht, anchored behind it. As Houston and I made our way along the cove's beach, we came upon an old wooden boat half buried in the sand, and a man sitting beside it. Because I was in a different personality, I did not recognize the man as my contact who ran the Stirrup Cay control tower for the drug trafficking and covert activity. I asked him how he got there. He began his charade, which, due to the depths of my trance, I believe in its literal text, while Houston heard quite a different story. I shipwrecked. John, the name I called him, pointed to the boat half buried in the sand. That's all that is left of my boat, I asked. Why haven't you been rescued? He cryptically replied, I sent a message in a bottle, and I expect a response real soon. Good thing I had these coconuts, he was carving one, and all that sugar in the hull to sustain me. Houston laughed immediately, realizing that sugar meant cocaine, and said, surprised, in the hull? And he bent down to look inside the wreck. I looked too. There was more cocaine and dark cocaine paste that I could mule carry in one walking haul, even with both of my tote bags full. But I could not comprehend reality in the midst of this charade, and therefore commented that he was fortunate that both the white and brown sugar had made it through the wreck. Houston said, so they cast you away, huh? My contact laughed and sniffed. Yeah, cast me away with all that sugar. That's nothing to sniff at. He looked up as Houston informed him a speedboat was approaching. I looked out across the cove beyond the little island and finally noticed Noriega's yacht, a black mirror finished speedboat which matched the upper smoke glass window of Noriega's yacht, was approaching, John told me, probably something to do with the message I sent. Help me wave him in. I did. He handed me a coconut, using it as a scramble and an excuse for me to join him on Noriega's yacht, persuaded me to board the speedboat with him. Houston stayed behind to guard the cocaine that had obviously already been delivered from Noriega's yacht. When we pulled up to the rear of the yacht, I was helped on board by Noriega's armed guards. I noticed there did not seem to be any big parties going on as was customary, and Noriega seemed unusually abrupt and businesslike. He was not drunk this time. Upon command from John, I delivered Fahad's message. I am under command to deliver a message from King Fahad. The Caribbean is becoming volatile. Trouble in Jamaica, trouble in Cuba, even in Panama. Dominican Republic must be launching point for missiles and artillery that are being channeled through Cuba. Concluding arms deal. Carrier pigeon must be detained until all transactions are cleared. Banco de Panama to receive contra aid after all steps leading to me have been swept away by the shifting sands of time, and all pigeon droppings pigeon-holed. Our business is concluded. Let us part on friendly terms. My personal perceptions of history as it happened in reality remains somewhat distorted, as I had no access to news outside of my mind-controlled environment. In order to keep my memory retrieval free of contamination, I completed the deprogramming process before educating myself through books and news. I have since learned that what was reported as news was often distorted propaganda, and many events were never reported at all. Therefore, I do not know of the troubles in Jamaica and Cuba to which King Fahad referred. I was aware, however, that due to outside scrutiny, Houston had recently met with Jamaican officials in Kingston pertaining to ceasing the long-standing criminal covert operations. As for Cuba, I only knew that I was no longer meeting with my Cuban contact. In Panama, I knew Noriega himself was the object of controversy. The arms deal was the final stage of the Operation Carrier Pigeon, where the planes were to wait in Saudi Arabia until a bank transaction was cleared and the load was ready for disbursement. Saudi Arabian King Fahad would fund the Contras via Noriega for Reagan after all evidences had been properly covered up, just as he had done in Afghanistan. And after the shipment, there would be no further deals through Noriega involving Fahad because Noriega could no longer be trusted. Besides, Fahad had increased diplomatic relations with Mexico for covert operations, and Iran-Contra was just beginning to heat up. Noriega did not seem to be upset by the news of losing Saudi Arabian business, although he was somber and took some time to respond. His translator was working over some complex computer equipment after I delivered the message. I left Noriega's yacht with John and a brief message for Dick Cheney at the Pentagon. Back on Stirrup Cay, Houston was anxiously awaiting to begin transporting the cocaine back to the party area of the island. There, NCL workers were cleaning up from the cruise ship's beach party cookout, which was NCL's excuse to stop the ship. After I muled the first heavy load of cocaine into my tote sacks, Houston approached one worker familiar with the drug operation and informed him we had a heavier load than usual and needed to make another trip. The worker directed us to a huge empty food container used for transporting cookout supplies from the ship and gave us the key. We locked the first load in the container, and I took my empty tote sacks plus another straw bag for another haul. With the second load, Houston even carried some cocaine himself. We had to run quite a distance through the island's woods. In an attempt to make it back to the ship's shuttle before scheduled departure time, when we arrived, the beach was nearly deserted as all the passengers had been taken back to the ship. All that remained was the food container and the NCO worker who was hurrying us onto the shuttle and on board the ship, which was waiting for us. When the cruise ship docked at the port of Miami, Puerto Rican drug lord and CIA operative Jose Busto was acting as a U.S. immigrations officer commissioned by the Drug Enforcement Agency through the CIA, which he often did for the NCL. Bustos helped us clear ship undetected with the large load of cocaine. The drugs were packed into suitcases, then loaded into Houston's specially made motorhome, which was parked in the NCL's guarded restricted parking lot. Most of the cocaine was dropped off as usual at Warner Robins Air Force Base in Macon, Georgia, to be distributed to destinations unknown to me. The money generated by the sale of cocaine was supposedly used to fund a major arms shipment into Saudi Arabia. These weapons were reportedly distributed among several neighboring countries. The profits were then relayed into Reagan-Contra's cause. A large quantity of cocaine was retained by Houston for his own use and delivery for personal profit through his country music industry contacts. Some of the cocaine would be delivered to me by Saudi Arabian ambassador Prince Bandahar bin Sultan, Fahad's own homing pigeon. I carried a message from Warner Robins Air Force Base in addition to the message from Noriega agreeing to Fahad's terms back to Dick Cheney at the Pentagon. Cheney then prepared me for the final phase of the operation. This was a meeting with Prince Bandahar, who Cheney, Houston, and others referred to as Sultan, in Nashville, Tennessee, where he often visited corrupt friends. There, I would relay a message of agreement to Fahad's terms between Noriega and the United States, as well as confirm all Air Force flights, carrier pigeons, and bank transactions. In turn, Fahad's homing pigeon would relay the messages to Fahad, so that the seemingly long-running drugs for arms deals would draw to successful conclusion. Dick Cheney cautioned me. Sultan will be in Nashville having dinner with friends at the Stockyard. The Stockyard was a popular country music dinner club known for its CIA criminal covert activity involvement. Cheney glanced at the list on his desk and continued. Among others, those friends would be Mayor Fulton and Sheriff Thomas. They are considered a threat to the operation. They're not discreet. Thomas in particular is not to be trusted. He's an ass and too crooked, so Sultan must leave the table before the message is delivered. Any questions? Good. I certainly had no questions this time. I did not need him to caution me about Nashville's Mayor Richard Fulton, whom Houston had prostituted me to, and Sheriff Fate Thomas. I had known the pair for years and had been cautioned about them before, and had no respect for them at all. Together, Thomas and Fulton had indiscreetly perpetuated the total corruption that had permeated Nashville's $2.8 billion country music industry, which ran the city of Nashville. They ran the business from a bar, the stockyard, while they drank and openly used cocaine. If I had the capacity to wonder, I would have wondered what the homing pigeon so critical to the conclusion of this international covert operation was doing with such a low-level sleaze. As it was, I could only sense relief at not having to deal with them too. Prince Bandahar bin Sultan's reputation for sex and drugs was widely known in Nashville, but much of my information pertaining to his activities came from one of my closest Project Monarch friends. She is an entertainer's daughter who was prostituted regularly to Sultan when he was in town, which was often. When Cheney was through with me, Byrd escorted me to the White House to see Reagan, who also cautioned me about the prince. Reagan was aware of Habib's having activated me sexually with King Fahad, and made it clear that any scheduled rendezvous with Prince Bandahar would not include the usual sex. Reagan joked in Byrd's presence. Birds may well be eaten by a kitten. Reagan's pet name for me, but not homing pigeons. Homing pigeons taste foul, Byrd laughed. Reagan continued, homing pigeons have one purpose, passing messages. Throughout history, the world's leaders have passed messages to and from each other by the way of pigeons. Messages that have set the course of events, that have altered the course of history. Homing pigeons are loyal and dedicated to their task, flying overseas, yet never pausing long enough to even quench their thirst, giving no thought to their own needs. When a pigeon is released, he takes a direct course to his destination, dedicated to delivering the very messages on which history was founded. Why even Noah relied on a pigeon to traverse the seas to bring back a message of hope. It is your duty to attach an added message to the homing pigeon, one of peace from our homeland to his, one from the President of the United States to King Fahad of Saudi Arabia, omitted due to international ramification. Byrd was visibly inspired by the speech. I was literally saved by the bell from another boring, long-winded recitation that Reagan had just inspired in Byrd when Cheney telephoned me back to his office. It was still morning, and Cheney had appeared very busy, hurried and irritable when I had seen him just a short time earlier. My heart was heavy in expectant anticipation of the physical and sexual brutality Cheney's moods normally incited, yet I was relieved to escape the torturous picture-painting competition that experience had taught me Byrd and Reagan were about to embark on. My heart lightened when my escort left me at Cheney's office, and I noticed his foul mood had changed dramatically. "I understand you ordered me to report in, sir?" Cheney looked up from his desk where he was shuffling through papers and trying to tie up loose ends before leaving his office. Sit down, he ordered. "I just got word that Genie in the Bottle castaway operation is complete, and I intend to pop a cork or two of my own in celebration of its successful conclusion. I have time on my hands, and I want you to join me. The bunkhouse is being prepared. Cheney apparently thought of something, went to the door, and told the guy who had escorted me, "Make sure there's some Wonderland wafers in the bunkhouse." He walked to his desk, picked up the phone, and said, I'm out of here, into it, and slammed it down. I followed Cheney out the door, and we turned to the right rather than to the left outside of his office and walked to his personal quarters, referred to as the bunkhouse. It was decorated in Cheney's Western style in browns and tans, with leather furniture. There was no food, maybe some nuts stashed somewhere, but plenty of bottles of alcohol. I was swollen and bleeding vaginally. The bottoms of my shirt were soaked in blood, and my belly hurt deep inside. When my escort finally came for me early the next morning, staying around Cheney while he slept was as deadly a mistake as removing his clothes or questioning him. It was forbidden. This time he broke his own rule and did not even punish me for it when morning arrived. He had spent so many hours drinking alcohol and using his enormous penis as an assault weapon that he had passed out shortly before my escort arrived. As I walked into the hall, I doubled over in pain. My escort turned to Cheney and remarked, "Christ, Cheney." Cheney lifted his head and proudly slurred, "Now you know why they call it Dick." Back in Tennessee, my CIA-paid gynecologist, who knew I was under mind control, covered for my abusers as usual and wrote me a prescription for swelling and pain. I was still in pain and ill from my exposure to Dick Cheney and his high-voltage torture and brutal sex when Houston drove me to Nashville Stockyard nightclub for my rendezvous with Prince Bandar bin Sultan. A waitress led me to the Saudi Arabian ambassador's table where he was just drinking with Mayor Fulton, Sheriff Thomas, and Metro Police Chief Joe Casey. I approached him and said, "If you please, Sir Oz, I am under command to deliver a message to you from the Pentagon. There is to be no horseplay, sex games. We must get down to business." There was laughter from everyone at the table. I continued, "My message is brief, and I only need a moment of your time away from your dinner." The prince's face grew more serious, and we left the table. He touched the waitress's arm, and she pointed to a door across the hall that led to an empty room. We stood just inside the room, and I quickly delivered my pigeon cryptic message. "The carrier pigeon Air Force airplane will take flight, and I will keep its promise, the agreed load, while all transactions, both blank and distribution, are procured through the designated diplomatic channels. Habib, your bonus, 1 crystal, 3 cuts awaits you. The President of the United States gives his word to King Fahad. He told me his driver would meet out front of the stockyard and instructed me to put the cocaine in the back. I left the building to rejoin Houston at the car in order that the cocaine should be delivered. While a white stretch limousine was pulled up in front of the stockyard, Chief Casey's assigned Metro police officers guarded the area, and cocaine was transferred into the back seat of the Prince's limo. Houston and I immediately left the area. My part in the Operation Carrier Pigeon was concluded. That's it for today.